Today we are starting Psalm 21. Now, there's a tension with studying Psalms, and I'm thrilled that we've been doing both. One is the model, which is from my tradition, and it's a more from tradition, traditional Jewish, which is to go one through and all the way through. And we're going to go as far as we can, and then we're going to be picking out different Psalms. Sometimes we'll just be reading them, sometimes studying them. And then there's also studying Psalms for which there's a theme or some other organizing principle. And that's why when Rabbi Rapport, she and I discussed it, when she's taken over the class, she's exposed you to a different way of looking at Psalms, which is when the Psalms have some kind of organizing principle, like the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat, or like the Psalms of Hallel, or as she will teach you this summer, the Psalms of Psuke de Zimra, which is the part of the morning service that has Psalms of praise. So that's also kind of fun to see when some, or what we did by looking very briefly with Rabbi Simcha Weintraub, the Psalms of the Bratslav Hasidim, those 10 Psalms, but we didn't actually look at the Psalms. But many people will group Psalms in different kinds of ways. These are the Psalms you say when this happens. These are the I really love, and when I recite the Psalms on my own, while I have some personal favorites that I'll go to for individual Psalms at individual moments, I love reciting the book as a book or going through groups of them. And when I started, and everybody knows I use classical music as my example of beginner studies because I knew nothing about classical music. So as an adult coming to classical music, everything was a revelation. So, and the Jewish stuff was more familiar to me. So for instance, you could listen to a whole opera, right? Or you could listen to the famous arias. But you could go to a concert where a soprano just sings the famous aria from an opera, and that's really fun, right? That's the kind of the juicy stuff. But there is a way that you hear that aria differently if you listen to the whole opera. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes, yes,
that there's the stuff that isn't the peak moments of glory, somehow have even more depth when you've done everything.
yes,
And that's true about the Psalms for me also. That there are super duper famous Psalms, and there's good reason why they're super duper famous. We're gonna hit Psalm 23 very soon because and there's a good reason that Psalm 23 is as famous and as beloved as it is. It's not like it has a false. And we did one day of Psalm 23. We're gonna spend real time with Psalm 23 when we get there. And Psalm 21 isn't a famous one, and very few people study it, and it doesn't get recited all the time. But I feel deeply that if you go through the whole, when you get to the peak moments, you see them in a different way. I hope that's clear to people. You know what I'm trying to say?
yes.
That there's a way
That
that the
is,
rhythm of the less exciting peaks make the peaks even more interesting, and you see them differently. Both are valuable, and it's not that I don't think it's valuable to just listen to VC de Arte over and over again. Believe me, I can listen to VC de Arte on a repeat track forever. But I also love the whole opera. It's a real. So I don't know if this makes sense to you, that I'm trying to get to you about the Psalms. Hang in there for the ones that feel a little bit like they're a slog. There are some that take a little bit more work. There are some, and it's true, by the way, with symphonies, true, right? You could play the one movement, and that's done all the time in concerts where a movement of a symphony is played. But it loses something if that movement is speaking, has something to say in the midst of all the others. Now, these Psalms were not necessarily written that way, where they have a written relationship to each other, but that's how they've been recited for thousands of years. So they take on a meaning of context. Not that they technically have a meaning of context, but there's a rhythm to reciting them. And it's almost as if you kind of need to coast for a while. So you say some psalms that are more like coasting, and then other psalms that burst your heart right open, either with joy or with sadness. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to encourage you. I know that some of them in 21 might not be the one that makes your heart sing, but it's still worthwhile because it's one of the Psalms and it's part of the big tapestry. So Very few non-Orthodox synagogues would study Psalm 20. Many of the Psalms we're doing together. And I feel like it's a gift I'm giving you. Hang in there. Don't worry if it doesn't explode in your lap as something that is transformative for your life. It's okay. Not everything has to be transformative. Sometimes things can be just a little interesting. And that's okay. Or even sometimes things are boring or alienating. That's okay too. Everything can't be the peak experience. Do you know what I mean? I just want to make sure people stay with me through this because, all right, let's just take a couple of comments. I see Ruthie and Shep have their hands up. And
Shep had his hand up first. Shep?
Oh, Rabbi, I have a question. With writers like Bernstein and Alter doing this in the modern times, has this been a tradition over the centuries that Jews write their own interpretations of the Psalms, or is this like a recent modern thing?
wow, that's a good question, Shep. I don't know the answer. I can't in my mind come up with, certainly the Psalms there's commentary on all the Psalms. Like I'll show you something that I have. This is Rashi's commentary on the Psalms. Look at this.
Oh my God.
That's one commentator. That's a traditional commentary on the Psalms.
Oh.
People will, and I'm gonna ask Rabbi Moskowitz if he knows them. I don't. What I know is that people have taken phrases like throughout our prayers. Frankly, remember I showed you how the end of the psalm with the may the words of my heart and the meditations of. So people have taken sentences and put them together, ma tovu, that has a bunch of different sentences of psalm, and rewritten a psalm, so to speak, with verses from different psalms. That is super common. And by the way, for those of you who are in the Yiddish class, Shalom Aleichem, he quotes from this psalm and from that psalm, and he makes up what it means all the time. But have people done exactly what we're doing by rewriting the whole thing in their own language? Before the modern period, I can't think of anything, but I'm going to check, Shep. It's a great question. Maybe somebody else knows something I don't know.
Okay, and Ruthie has her hand raised.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. Years ago, when I wanted to know about the Psalms, Rabbi Cohen recommended a wonderful book. For those of you who are still questioning what the heck this is all about, this is very, a really wonderful book. And it's called Bringing the Psalms to Life by Daniel Polish. And in the back, it says creative ways we can understand the Psalms and use their power to enrich our lives. I think it's, I tried to put it in the chat, but I didn't finish the whole book, the name of the book.
Yeah,
I don't know if you could see it. It's very simple. It's not written the way we're doing it. Psalm 1 to 120. It brings in each chapter different Psalms and how to handle it and what to do from different people.
I don't know that book, so put it in the chat.
This is Rabbi Cohen.
When
she was here years ago.
Than I am, so that's great. So, and by the way, and I think somebody pointed out in Rabbi Simcha Weintraub's book, he does recommend doing exactly what we're doing. So clearly, I mean, I'm not the first person. So I don't know, Shep. It's a great question.
We have a couple of more hands raised.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's take some hands, and then we'll get into Psalm 21.
Ben Sheffron.
Good morning. Psalm 21 seems to be a very good example of the leitmotif that we've had throughout, from Psalm 1 to here, of the idea that you raise those who trust you and you smite those who hate you. However these were written, it was contrary to the historical evidence. How did this come about?
You mean because the Jews always got smitten?
Yeah, there were never,
Politically.
whatever they were writing about is not what was happening.
Well, there's a lot that said that. Why did Jews come up with the idea of Superman? Like those are two little Jewish boys on the Lower East Side who got beaten up all the time. Sometimes literature gets written kind of as wishful thinking, right? By those who don't have power, imagine a time that they would have power. Although some of these probably were written in brief moments in the, in the years where there was some little political power. But you're absolutely right. Most of time until 1948, Jews had no political power and no military power. And that's why some people talk about the Purim story and the horrific violence against those is kind of like a revenge tale, which is a whole thing that exists in literature of people with no power imagining they have the power to get back at somebody. But I would add on to that what I've said over and over again. Every psalm can be read as an internal struggle as much as the external. And it can be read as and this psalm, which we're about to get into, deals a lot with anger. So if you read this psalm as talking about, let me just tell you something. I think a lot of us know a lot about anger, both being the victims of anger in our personal relationships or from our parents, and also being unable to control the expression of anger to the people we love the most or in the world. And when you start to read this psalm about how we deal with anger in our personal lives, all of a sudden it feels a lot different than just the external. But you're absolutely right, Ben. Jews have not had, until 1948, Jews have not had a lot of political or military power. There were brief moments in that first millennium where Jews did have some power, political power, but not a whole lot. Okay, let's take the 3 other comments and then we'll dive in.
Okay, Dean?
I just have one to share, which is that in the 12th, 13th, and 14th century, the orders in Ethiopia had, in order to enter into illuminated manuscripts or whatever, they had to learn the Psalms, and they had to recite the full book of Psalms in their language. So I just wanted to share that was their daily meditation.
Yeah. I went on a retreat once in a convent in upstate New York, and it's very moving. They recite Psalms in a practice. They don't do all of them every day, but they do it over a course, I don't know how many days. And it was incredible to sit in the chapel and to listen to them recite the Psalms. Very powerful.
Sarah Siegel?
Ruthie's demo inspired me to just hold this up, but I need help with whether anybody's ever seen this Tehillim Treasury, and it's an art scroll thing. Rabbi Avraham Chaim Foyer. Is anybody familiar with this, Rabbi? Are you no? Okay, because the way it's broken down, and this has been very difficult for me to really get through it, is he groups it by themes: solace, serenity, sustenance, sickness. But it doesn't mention what the numbers of the Psalms are. So until you get there into the section. So I'm very spoiled with what you've been doing with us. You've been showing us, definite Psalm numbers. Anyway, if anybody else has seen this, let me know and recommend it.
Our last question is Donna Gray.
All right.
So it's not a question, it's a comment. I just want to say that before Simcha Weintraub came on, I did what he suggested, which was reading through all the 10 Psalms in that book. And it was an amazing experience. I felt completely uplifted. So I just want to share that visceral experience.
Wonderful.
I'd like to just remind everyone, please put these books and all of this wonderful information in our Facebook group.
Yep, that'd be great. All right, so let's look at Levy's Psalm 21. We start with this, of course, because I want to start by having some grounding in the Hebrew. And we're skipping over Sepharia now because we've done that for many months, and Levy provides me with enough of the Hebrew English to get to it. So we're not using the Sepharia translation anymore, so we could jump right into it. So if we could...
Shall I screen share, Rabbi?
Would you please, Annika? Thank you so much. You all should have gotten these as well in the email if you like to print out for yourself. So you'll notice I don't see it yet, Annika.
It's not allowing me.
It's not allowing you.
It's not allowing me. So,
Tasha, can you give...
Tasha, could you help, please? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about
I'll
this.
try and share it. Psalm 21.
So if in the Hebrew, I just wanted to point out for people in all of Levy's titles, it says Tehillim in the Hebrew, Perek 21. And that's important to know because in Hebrew we call them a Perek, Prakim. Perek is a chapter. So in Hebrew we consider each of these a chapter in the book of, excuse me, I'm just coughing, it's nothing. So traditionally each of these Psalms is considered a chapter, and the book of Psalms is the 150. And that might be a little unusual to an English speaker to consider each Psalm a chapter, but I wanted to point that out, that that's just the way that in Hebrew we refer to it. So we'll say Perek 21, for instance. So you see in the, thank you so much. So you see in the Hebrew, for those who can read the Hebrew, it says Tehillim, Perek, Chaf Aleph, or so it just says Perek, the chapter, and in English we just will say Psalm 21, and that's a difference. Both that Tehillim itself is a plural word, so when we say the word Tehillim, we're actually talking about the book, Sefer Tehillim, the whole book, and in Hebrew the convention is to say Sefer Tehillim or just Tehillim, and then Perek 21, like it is there. And in English, we don't say that because the word Psalm is a singular word, and we talk about the book of Psalms, but you can refer to, we don't say in Hebrew Tehillah, which would be the singular of Tehillim, or Perek, Tehillah 1. We might say Mizmor, but not really. Usually we just call it by Prakim or Perek. So that's just an interesting difference. Do we have anybody who'd like to read the Hebrew and then someone get ready to read the English? Do we have any Hebrew readers here?
Yeah, I'll volunteer to read the Hebrew for us today.
Good morning.
Good morning, Yael. And good news about the vaccinations going to younger and younger.
Yes, I can't wait. Very happy about it.
How old are the girls?
15.
15, so that way they'll be able to get vaccinated
Perfect.
before the summer. Great, okay.
Yes.
So read the Hebrew, please.
למנצח מזמור לדוד. אדוני בעוזך ישמח מלך, ובישועתך מה יגל מאוד. תאוות ליבו נתת לו, וארשת שפתיו בל מנעת סלע. כי תקדמנו ברכות טוב, תשית לראשו עטרת פז. חיים שאל ממך נתת לו, אורך ימים עולם ועד. גדול כבודו בישועתך, הוד והדר תשווה עליו. כי תשיתהו ברכות לעד, תחדהו בשמחה את פניו. כי המלך בוטח באדוני, ובחסד עליון בל ימות. תמצא ידך לכל אויביך, ימינך תמצא שונאיך. Annika, whoever is doing this, can you just scroll all the way up? There you go. תסיתמו כתנור אש לעת פניך, אדוני באפו יבלעם, ותאכלם אש. פריימו מארץ תאבד, וזרעם מבני בני אדם. כי נטו עליך רעה, חשבו מזימה בל יאכל. כי תסיתמו שכם במיתריך תכונן על פניהם. רומה אדוני בעוזיך, נשירה ונזמרה גבורתך.
Yikes, huh, Yael?
Yes.
Okay, this is a little bit of a yikes one. Okay, who's going to read the English?
Sarah Sloan has her hand up. Is that for English or Hebrew? Sarah, please unmute.
Yeah, I'll read the English.
Wonderful.
For the conductor, a psalm of David. Adonai, through your strength does the sovereign rejoice, and in your victory he finds great joy. The desire of his heart you grant, the request of his lips you do not withhold. Selah. For you advance towards him with blessings of goodness. You place upon his head a crown of gold. He asks life from you, You granted it to him, and length of days till eternity advances to fill all space. Great is his glory through your victory. Honor and splendor you set upon him. For you place blessings on him forever. You delight him with joy in your presence. For the sovereign trusts in Adonai. Through the covenantal love of the Most High, he will not stumble. Your hand, O earthly ruler, shall find all your enemies. Your right hand shall find out your foes. Thou shalt make them like a furnace roaring with fire when your face says your time is up. Adonai in anger will swallow them up. Fire shall devour them. Thou shalt rip out their fruit from the earth and their seed from the human race. For they inclined evil against you. They hatched a plot. They will not prevail. For thou wilt shove their sharp shoulders before you. You will bear your bowstrings in their face. Be exalted, Adonai, in your strength. Let us sing songs and chant psalms, hailing your power.
All right, thank you both of you so much. So first of all, hold on, let's go back to the beginning. Great. So first of all, we see again with Levy, let me emphasize this so you keep that muscle going. You first look at this, Levy numbers the verses, and his English tries to stay very close to the Hebrew with some important changes. He removes the masculine references to human beings. So for instance, Melech, which means literally king, he translates as sovereign. So wherever Melech appears or Malchut, he uses the word sovereign or sovereignty. And where the Yud He Vav He exists in the Hebrew, he replaces it with Yud Yud. But yes, he uses masculine uses masculine pronouns. So let's look through this. This is not an easy psalm, and it is called one of the royal psalms because it talks about royalty and a sovereign. And let's try and understand how we would read this where it might have meaning to us both externally and internally, and I think it does. But we start with that first superscription, which Levy includes because he believes it's important to understand that the opening phrase. He does have you see formatting. He has a break between the superscription, Lamanatseach Mizmor LeDavid, for the conductor, a psalm of David. And as we've seen before, Lamanatseach, which means some kind of leader, Levy understands that to be a musical leader, a conductor, and literally this does not mean a trained conductor. This literally means Levy is seeing these as musically presented and composed for music. And so Lamanatseach. What exactly he's telling the conductor with this, we don't know, right? It's Lamanatseach, Mizmor LeDavid, a song or a psalm of David. So he is translating the singular of, so Mizmor is the singular for Tehillim, which is the book of Psalms or of praise. So verse 2, Yud He Vav He. The word Oz, we've come across before. Some of you know we love to sing from a different psalm in Hallel, Ozi v'Zimrat Yah. We sing that, it's from one of the psalms of Hallel. Oz is strength, and remember I've talked about Oz. The Oz is the moving company in New York because they're a bunch of Israelis, and so it means strong, but we see it as Oz, like the Wizard of Oz. And you'll notice that the psalm begins and ends with Ozi. So if you look in verse 2, you see Oz Bi Ozcha, and then in verse 14, we have Bi Ozecha. So it's beginning and ending with a sense of strength. And Ozi v'Zimrat Yah from the Psalm from Hallel, we talk about the power in the universe gives me strength. So where does our strength come from in order to survive difficult things, in order to emerge? So Yud He Vav He. And again, Levy uses Adonai. He doesn't use an English word to kind of mean the name that is unsayable. Bi Ozcha. in your strength or through your strength, the bet in the beginning as a prefix can mean a lot of different things. We tend to want to translate that as just mean in. It can be with, it can mean by, it can be through. Be'ozcha, in your strength, yismach melech. So yismach, sin mem chet is the shoresh, like simcha, like sameach, lismoach, to be happy. So through your strength, in your strength, yismach melech, the sovereign, whatever this means, is happy. And then the second part of the parallelism, uvishuatecha. Yeshua here, remember, this is the word for salvation, redemption, being saved. Here he translates this as victory. And remember, for Christians reading this, Yeshua, whenever Yeshua, it usually has some reference to the Savior, meaning Jesus, but Beshuatecha, and through your redemption, Ma Yagel Me'od, he will, Yagel is also another word for joy, Gila, like the word Gila, Rina, Dita, Bechedva. So you can see the parallelism of the two verses. So through your strength, Yismach Melech, there will be joy for the sovereign. Uveshuatecha, and through your redemption will be great joy or great strength. So you see that's a very easily seen the parallelism. Verse 3. Ta'avat libo. Libo is heart, like lev, through their heart. Natata lo ve'ereshet svatav. And the request of his lips, you do not withhold. And here's the word Selah again. And remember, we don't really know what Selah means, although most commentators, which doesn't mean they're right, but of course, most commentators think Selah is probably some kind of musical notation, either a pause, it could be a rest, or it's some kind of musical notation, but it means some kind of dramatic something. We just don't know what it is exactly. And we've talked about it in other places where it appears. Sometimes it's repetitious in the psalm, so it really, you feel like there's some rhythm to it. I think this is the only time it appears in this psalm. And it appears over 70 times throughout the Psalms. It is somewhat in other places in the Chumash, in the Tanakh, but not frequently. It is mostly only found in the Psalms, but not exclusively. Now, the Hebrew word, if it were spelled with an ayin, means rock. And it's often used in parallel to other words for rock or foundation, but it sounds like rock. So that's always for poetry, there are homonyms, right? That words could actually sound similar, and even if they mean something different. So now, of course, when this was written, the ayin was probably pronounced differently, but that doesn't mean, that it opens it up for us. So, but Selah and Selah are two different words, although remember, this is always true throughout biblical poetry, that words that are homonyms get used maybe to evoke something which we can't understand necessarily, but for sure these were all initially oral traditions. Okay, so verse 4. Ki tikadmenu. So the shoresh of that second word is kuf daled mem, which means like lahakdim means to go forward, to push something forward. Kadima is an instruction, move forward. Kadima, move. So this is, so something about your advance, he translates towards him, birchot tov. So with blessings of goodness. Birchot tov, blessing. Bracha, everybody has heard that word perhaps. Bracha is a blessing which we use all the time. So with blessings of goodness, tov. That's like in the Psalm for Shabbat. Tov lahodot. Tov means essentially good. Tashit l'rosho ateret paz. You put l'rosho on their head, on his head. Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah. Rosh is a head. Ateret is a crown of gold. So wow, these are some very nice images, right? Blessings of goodness, crown of gold. Very positive. Chaim, 5. Chaim sha'al mimcha. He asked life from you. Natata lo, and you gave it to him. So who's talking to whom here? It's a big question. Is it the sovereign and Yud-Heh Vav-Heh? Erech yamim olam va'ed. Erech yamim, the length of days, olam va'ed, forever. And those phrases are used repeatedly throughout Psalms to mean eternity or forever. Orech yamim or olam va'ed. Those are words. Now you notice there's a pause, or not a pause, a break between 5 and 6. So just notice that for now. Looking at 6. Gadol kavodo. So gadol is big. Kavodo. Kavod is honor, or it could be in God's presence. Bishuatecha. Big is his glory or honor. Bishuatecha. A word is repeated. Bishuatecha. We saw Yeshuatecha earlier. Through what? He repeats it in English too, so you see that. Great or big is his glory, Bishuatecha, through your redemption, victory, salvation. Hod v'hadar tishaveh alav. Hod v'hadar, honor and glory tishaveh alav. You have put alav on him. 7. Ki tishitehu vrachot la'ad. You have put or placed blessings. Here's the word for blessings, la'ad. That word is repeated forever. There's a sense of eternal blessing. Tichadehu b'simcha et panecha. Simcha, repeated verb, repeated noun, repeated shoresh. You get pleasure in giving him joy in et panecha. Panecha is literally in your face, but it means your presence if you're in front of somebody, so in front of him. Ki hamelach boteach Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, because the sovereign boteach, bet tet chet means secure, like bitachon is security. Sar HaBitachon is the security minister in Israel. Bor HaBitachon is the security pits along the road. Betach is a very popular word to mean sure or definitely. So there's a great sense of security with that word. Trust is secure, feels rooted. Uvechesed elyon baltimot. Chesed means loving kindness. Here he's translating this as covenantal love. Elyon is another reference to the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, to the one most high, Bal Yimot. Because of the love of the Holy One, because of feeling surrounded by the Holy One, he will not stumble.
Rabbi,
Yes.
how about lamut? Is there a play on words there with lamut? Die and stumble.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's a different word because but absolutely, homonym wise, absolutely. So a tough, lamut, to die, in Hebrew is with a tough, and this is with a tet, but absolutely in terms of a homonym. But words are dangerous, and the word die in Hebrew means enough. I don't know if I told this story about Israeli parents screaming at their children in an American airport, die, 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 which means just you're yelling at your kid to stop doing something. But to American ears, it does not sound good. It sounds like you're telling your kid to die. It's a whole story of a friend of mine, but we'll pause on that. But yes, it could be, although you're right, it's spelled differently, but it certainly is, he will not die. Yep. 9. Timsa yadcha l'chol oivecha. Again, another body part. Your hand, yadcha, will find all of the oivecha. And oivecha, remember we've talked about there are multiple words for evil people in the Psalms. Oyev is one of them, Rasha, Ra, those are the three big ones. And an oyev can also always be an internal enemy. But your hand will find your enemies. And remember, biblical Hebrew starts naturally with a verb. So this is a natural sentence. And if it doesn't start with a verb, it's making a statement. So tzimtza yadcha is normal for biblical Hebrew, where the verb comes first and the noun. But the English, he's reordered it because he understands biblical Hebrew well enough to know they're not trying to make you will find your hand for all your enemies, which is how it would be literally. Your hand, O earthly ruler, shall find your enemies, is a more natural English structure. Okay, here we come to the right hand here. Yemincha timsa sonecha. Oh, and sonim is another, haters is another, was the fourth word. Your right hand will find, soneh is to, lisno is to hate. So your hand will find those who hate you. 10. You will make ketanor. A tanor is an oven or a furnace. Very, very common ancient word. And I don't know, Israelis in the group, does tanor still mean an oven in modern Hebrew? It's throughout biblical and
Yep.
rabbinic Hebrew, yes? Yeah, so it's a very, yeah. So it means an oven, esh. Ketanor is like a furnace roaring with fire. Yud he vav he be'apo yivalem. Your face, be'apo, remember, apo is literally, af is a nose, but it's a way of, the image is nostrils that are inflamed, or what's the word we say in English? We say something about nostrils.
Flare.
Flare. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, so the same thing, kind of flared nostrils means somebody who's worked up, angry. V'tochlem esh. Adonai, in anger, will swallow them up. Fire shall devour them. Wow, that's intense. Who here has known that kind of anger, right? So the idea is to try and really relate. We'll get back to it. I just want to go through this once. So we have the Piryamo me'eretz to abed. Piryamo is a borei puri hagafen is fruit. So you shall me'eretz to abed. Abed is to destroy. Abed is to ruin or to destroy. You will ruin, but here you will rip out their fruit from eretz, from the land. V'zar'am mibnei adam. Zera is a seed, and their seeds from all of humanity. 12. Ki natu alecha ra'ah. Because they have inclined, or natua is oh God, I can't think of natua. Ra'ah. So there's the word for ra'ah. So you see, we have in this psalm all these different words for enemies, for people out to destroy you. We have oyev, we have ra'ah, we have soneh, haters. We have haters, evil people. So this psalm brings all these words into this. Chashvu mizima bal yochalu. They have, I like this, they hatched a plot, bal yochalu, but they will not be able to accomplish it. They will not be able to do it. 13. He, tishi temo shechem, for you will shove their sharp shoulders, Shechem, shoulders before you. B'meitarecha. You will bear their bowstrings, al panecha. How did they get bowstrings there? Anybody know? Okay, 14. Ruma. This is like Roman, like this is laharim, to go up. Be exalted, go up. Yud He Vav He Bi'ozecha. Again, we start and end with the word oz for strength. Nashira, we will sing. Ve'un zamra, and we will sing. But Zamir here, but the reason he says chant psalms is because mizmor in Hebrew is a word for psalm. Gvuratecha. Gvura is power or strength, another word for power or strength. Okay, so there you go. So I wanted to do this one run through of the psalm, and let's look quickly if we can. I just want to look quickly at Barbara Monda's version of Psalm 21. Does one of you have that, Annika or Tasha?
I have it, but it's not allowing me to screen share. Tasha is going to try to bring it up.
Okay, we're
I'm going to do it. 1 second.
okay, thanks. I don't know why you're not being able to. You're listed as a co-host, Annika.
It's something in the hardware when it's complicated.
Okay,
I'm going to
don't
fix
tell me.
it later. Yeah, I know.
I apologize.
It would be totally too much information. While we're waiting for the screen share, Shep has his hand up.
Okay, Jeff.
Just a quick question. In verse 13, Shechem means sharp shoulders. Is that the same word or just a homonym for Shechem, the city in Israel? Shechem.
The same shoresh. It's certainly spelled the same way, but I don't know why. That's a good. I never thought about that, Shep. I never made the connection. You know, in Arabic, Shechem is not called Shechem; it's called Nablus.
Right. But by the way, Nablus is taken from the Latin
Shep, I'm
Neapolis.
gonna cut you off there because I just want to.
Okay, bye.
In our last couple of minutes, and you will look at this more in Chavruta tomorrow. Does somebody want to just read this? Is it readable? I'm sorry, it's so.
Can we have a volunteer to read the English, please?
This is Naomi. I'll read.
Okay, thanks, Naomi.
A wise leader knows she cannot do everything alone. Neither does the credit of her good works belong only to her. Mother of wisdom, you have seen into her heart and granted her desires. You have walked next to her and secured her position. You have granted prosperity, health, and other blessings to all who trust in you, and they are unshaken in their commitment. Like flowers cared for by a tireless gardener, they bloom in the nurturing of a leader who is true to our mother's guidance. Those who abide in the spiritual garden of the Mother God and follow her lessons know no wanting. They are directed in the ways of a prosperity that gives life to others instead of feeding off the weak as the immoral do. An attentive leader is one who is open to God's direction and sees others as voices of the Mother. She is called upon to learn endlessly. Together as a nation, they take from the dark nurturance of Chokhmah all they require to grow in symbiotic harmony. Even when fire burns away the useless, ashes preserve the ingredients for vigorous life. A wise woman sees that death in winter brings life in spring. Everything is in your wise plan, Mother. Joyful winds blow through the garments of the daughters who hear you and sing your praises.
All right, friends. Well, we'll continue with these. I hope this has been generative for you in your minds and souls. And so tomorrow we'll continue studying in Chavruta, and we'll stay with these texts tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we're going to dive into Fisher as well. So we're just about to end, but I want you to see how creative and completely Barbara Manda really leaps away from the original text and structure. She numbers her verses, but she doesn't stick to the original is 14. And I want you to see in the original the struggle with this issue about anger. So that's a really interesting question for me about the psalm. And for me, in reading the psalm, I see it as a psalm that gives us advice about how to deal with anger, both anger that we receive and anger that we express. And anger being one of those deeply human emotions that can be appropriate and functional or can be completely destructive. It has its place, and it also can be a complete destruction. So I hope you will enjoy continuing to study these. And for those in the Yiddish class, I look forward to tonight's Yiddish class. Thank you, Annika and Tom.